The Kalyan-Badlapur Rail Project is part of a broader, multi-decade effort to expand and modernize suburban and trunk rail capacity in the Mumbai Metropolitan Region, MMR, where passenger demand has grown massively with urbanization and the outward spread of housing and employment nodes. Historically, the Central Railway corridor that runs east from Mumbai CSMT through Thane, Kalyan, Ambernath, Badlapur and onward has been one of India's busiest suburban corridors, carrying dense suburban traffic as well as important long-distance and freight movements. Over the last 2 decades, the mismatch between capacity and demand on this corridor produced chronic overcrowding, long dwell times, constrained speeds for fast services, and limited ability to increase the number of long-distance and freight paths. The Kalyan-Badlapur project, generally defined as provision of third and fourth lines along the Kalyan to Badlapur section, aims to create segregated corridors for suburban services and for mainline/freight traffic, expand the number and type of suburban services that can stop at intermediate stations, and reduce congestion and delays by separating traffic flows that currently conflict on two-line infrastructure. This segregation is central to the project's rationale. With dedicated suburban lines, it becomes feasible to run more slow and semi-fast suburban services, including longer 15-car rakes, maintain scheduled long-distance trains without interference from stopping locals, and improve reliability for freight and express services that are vital to the regional economy. Technically, the Kalyan-Badlapur works cover a relatively short but highly strategic stretch of railway. Official documents list the length at about 14.05 kilometers of additional third and fourth line provision. On paper, this may appear compact, but in practice, building additional tracks in this densely developed suburban corridor requires extensive civil works, formation widening or new formation construction, bridges and culverts, embankment works, road overbridges, ROBs, and underpasses to replace level crossings, modifications to existing station platforms and yards, signaling and interlocking reconfiguration, overhead electrification extensions, drainage improvements, and utility diversion wear. Telecommunication cables, water mains and power lines conflict with the new alignment. Given the existing built-up environment around Kalyan, Ambivli, Tidvala, and Badlapur, a substantial portion of the costs and time is consumed by construction of grade separators, bridge widening, and acquiring narrow strips of land for alignment adjustments and safety margins. The project is usually described in official planning documents as third and fourth line construction rather than a full new route, because it leverages the existing right-of-way in many stretches but requires careful engineering to integrate the new lines with existing platforms and yards, particularly at nodes like Kalyan Junction where suburban and mainline traffic converge. From an administrative and funding perspective, the Kalyan-Badlapur third and fourth line has been listed as a component of the Mumbai Urban Transport Project, MUTP, family of interventions overseen by agencies such as the Ministry of Railways, the Mumbai Railway Vikas Corporation, MRVC, and Central Railway. In the most recent public project briefs and press compilations, mid-2025, the Kalyan-Badlapur item appears among a package of prioritized rail capacity upgrades in Maharashtra under various MUTP phases, including MUTP 3A and other state central co-financed efforts. Official lists provide a cost estimate and priority ranking. Many government press releases and parliamentary documents show the project among other corridor upgrades intended to decongest the Mumbai suburban network. The financing model typically combines Central Railways Capital Budget, MRVC funding, which itself pools central and state resources under MUTP arrangements, and in some cases municipal or state contributions for the circulating area and roadworks necessary to make station upgrades usable by commuters. Some packages of the work are tendered to private contractors on EPC or item rate contracts. For example, some construction packages in the Kalyan-Badlapur corridor have documented awarded values in the tens to hundreds of crores depending on scope, track laying versus bridge works. The project's representation in national-level compilations underscores its strategic importance in the state's rail modernization envelope. Contracting and on-ground execution are broken down into multiple civil and track packages: earthworks and formation, track laying and ballast, bridge strengthening or new bridge spans, provision of new platforms where required, signaling and telecom, overhead equipment, OHE, extension, and station remodeling for passenger flows and longer rakes. A number of private construction firms have been engaged on discrete packages in the Kalyan-Badlapur corridor. For instance, certain civil packages, bridges, underpasses, awarded to regional contractors have publicly disclosed contract values and completion targets. Contractors executing packages must coordinate with the Central Railways Engineering and Construction Directorates and MRVC's project management teams for planned block possessions of the route during non-peak hours for track laying and OHE works. The works demand repeated night and weekend possessions of existing tracks to tie in the new crossovers, relocate point motors, test signaling interlocks, and energize the overhead lines. These possessions are always sensitive because they temporarily reduce available running lines and must be carefully scheduled to minimize commuter disruption. Signaling and operational planning are integral to the benefits envisioned from the third and fourth lines. Simply adding tracks without reworking signal blocks, interlockings, station throats, and timetable paths would not unlock capacity. Therefore, the project includes provision for modern signaling, high-density signaling where feasible, renewal of relay/solid-state interlocking to permit shorter headways on suburban lines, and updated train detection systems. The plan also assumes reconfiguration of Kalyan yard and throat area so that suburban lines are segregated physically from the mainline routes used by expresses and freight. This segregation reduces conflicting moves and allows suburban services to operate at slow-stopping patterns without impeding non-stop long-distance trains. Additionally, platform extensions at strategic suburban stations enable the introduction of 15 car rakes, or longer in future, which is a system-level change being pursued across Central Railway to increase per-train capacity rather than merely adding services. By combining longer rakes, segregated suburban tracks, and denser signaling, planners anticipate a significant uplift in the throughput of the corridor measured in trains per hour as well as in passengers carried. A candid assessment of project benefits must be grounded in projected operational outcomes. Once completed, the Kalyan-Badlapur third and fourth line is expected to increase suburban train paths, enabling more slow/semi-fast services to stop at intermediate stations like Ambernath, Badlapur, and Titvala without blocking express movements. B. Improve punctuality across both suburban and long-distance services, because conflicts at the Kalyan throat and single/double track bottlenecks are relieved. C. Permit a systematic scale-up of capacity through introduction of more 15-car services, thereby raising carrying capacity per train by 25–30% compared to standard 12-car rakes. D. Provide freight advantages by smoothing out pathing for goods trains that might otherwise be delayed by suburban stopping traffic. And E. Improve reliability during maintenance or incidents because additional lines create redundancy for routing trains. For daily commuters, these changes should translate into shorter waiting times, fewer hours spent in overcrowded trains, and a more consistent service that is less prone to cascading delays. For regional logistics, improved throughput on the corridor can reduce freight dwell times and facilitate better utilization of port-linked freight flows that are crucial for the wider Maharashtra economy. The Kalyan-Badlapur project cannot be isolated from contemporaneous upgrades elsewhere on the Central Railway corridor. There are parallel fourth-line endeavors between Kalyana-Asangan, yard segregation works at Kalyan, and other bottleneck removals being pursued under the MUTP umbrella. These projects are complementary. Improvements at Kalyan Yard to fully segregate long-distance and suburban lines magnify the benefit of adding a 3RD/4TH line between Kalyan and Badlapur because they enable cleaner routing and reduce the number of conflicting crossovers. Likewise, works proposed or underway on the Kalyana-Asangan stretch, a longer 32 km fourth line, and yard segregation interventions are intended to create a chain of debottlenecked segments so that benefits are system-wide rather than local. The national and state-level publicity around these packages in mid-2025 lists them together in a pipeline of priority projects for Maharashtra, suggesting an integrated multi-project program to address capacity constraints holistically rather than piecemeal. The interdependence of these interventions means that the actual passenger performance gains depend on synchronous completion of adjacent works, a risk and a planning requirement in equal measure. Project scheduling and the status as of mid-2025 show that the Kalyana-Badlapur works are part of an active pipeline where land acquisition efforts, tendering, and package-wise construction are all at different stages. Official press summaries of railway projects in Maharashtra published in 2025 list the Kalyan-Badlapur third and fourth line as a live project, indicating it is in the implementation portfolio of Central Railway and MRVC. Certain execution packages have been awarded and some civil works, e.g., small bridges, underpasses, and approach works, have begun or been contracted. At the same time, some crucial elements such as full yard segregation at Kalyan and adjacent fourth line stretches may remain works in progress, meaning the full operational advantage only materializes when multiple packages are completed and commissioned together. As with most railway capacity projects in built-up corridors, progress is incremental. Initial possessions and temporary diversions give way to permanent track laying and then to signaling and commissioning tests before the section is formally opened for traffic. Public updates in 2025 show the project firmly in the active list with associated expenditure figures reported as part of the state's railway investment dashboards. Implementation brings operational transitions as well. Once new lines are commissioned, timetable reworking is needed, new slot allocations for slow, semi-fast and fast locals, new paths for expresses, and coordinated freight windows. Railways may introduce new classes of suburban services, for example, additional semi-fast or fast trains that exploit segregated tracks for express runs past smaller stations, while slow locals can be scheduled separately on the new suburban tracks to maintain frequent stopping patterns. This operational redesign requires careful modeling of peak direction flows, morning inbound to Mumbai, evening outbound, station dwell times, and interchange demand. In practice, Central Railway will optimally phase in such timetable changes to minimize initial disruption, for instance, first running test services, adjusting platform assignments at Kalyan and Badlapur for the longer rakes, and then gradually adding peak extra services as crew and rake availability stabilizes. Staff training, updated driver route knowledge on new track alignments, and automated signaling familiarization are all part of commissioning. There are also meaningful economic and social dividends to the project beyond immediate commuter comfort. Reduced travel times and higher reliability can widen labor market catchment areas for employment centers in Mumbai and Navi Mumbai, enabling households in Badlapur and fringe towns to access higher value jobs. Property markets often respond to improved rail connectivity, with residential and commercial values appreciating in better served nodes. However, careful urban planning is required to manage land use intensification and avoid unplanned sprawl. Improved freight reliability on the corridor reduces logistics costs for industries reliant on timely rail movements and supports port hinterland connectivity. In aggregate, the project contributes to broader objectives of sustainable urban mobility by promoting rail as a high-capacity, lower-emission alternative to private vehicle trips and road freight, thereby helping to limit congestion and emissions in the MMR over the medium term. Risk management and critical success factors deserve attention. Land acquisition delays and legal disputes are perennial risks in Indian infrastructure and can hold up civil works. Coordination among multiple agencies, Central Railway, MRVC, state public works departments, municipal corporations, and multiple contractor firms, requires strong project management and dispute resolution mechanisms. Material supply chain disruptions, e.g., steel, ballast, and labor availability can inflate costs and lengthen durations, as can unforeseen geotechnical issues encountered during excavation for underpasses or ROB foundations. Weather-related delays during monsoon season are particularly relevant in the Mumbai region, necessitating scheduling around the heavy rain window and careful design of temporary works to avoid slope failures or waterlogging. Finally, successful integration of signaling, OHE, and track must be validated via exhaustive testing to ensure safety and reliability before opening to traffic. Project managers typically mitigate these risks through phased delivery, robust contract clauses, built-in contingency funds, and clear communication with affected communities. Looking forward, the Kalyan-Badlapur 3rd and 4th line sits within an evolving rail-first strategy for the Mumbai region that contemplates not just more tracks but smarter integration, signaling modernization, yard rationalization, longer rakes, better last-mile integration through bus and non-motorized transport linkages, improved station amenities and universal accessibility, and transit-oriented development in places where land use planning can be marshaled to support public transport. The synergistic completion of the Kalyan yard segregation, Kalyan-Asang and 4th line, and the Kalyan-Badlapur 3RD/4TH lines would produce a step change in corridor capacity. Policymakers and engineers recognize that single projects in a chain can only unlock their full potential when the adjacent bottlenecks are resolved too, hence the repeated emphasis in governmental publicity that these works are part of a broader package. For users, the ideal future is an integrated suburban network that can carry more passengers safely and reliably, with shorter peri-urban commute times and less overcrowding on daily services. In closing, the Kalyan-Badlapur Rail Project is a technically focused yet strategically critical intervention that addresses acute capacity constraints on the Central Railway suburban corridor. Its successful implementation hinges on engineering precision, cross-agency coordination, thoughtful handling of social and environmental impacts, and synchronized completion of neighboring packages to realize the systemic benefits. If executed well, it will materially improve the daily experience of hundreds of thousands of commuters, strengthen freight reliability, and provide a platform for expanded suburban services such as more 15-car rakes and differentiated fast/slow operations, thereby contributing to a more resilient and higher capacity rail backbone for the Mumbai Metropolitan Region. For the latest status, package-wise tender awards, and commissioning updates, consult MRVC and Central Railway Project dashboards and recent PIB/CR press releases, which periodically publish the current list of projects and their stage of implementation.